Hello and welcome to SME Focus, powered by MTDCNC. I'm Mark Weymouth from the Centre Specialist Plus Automation. This podcast aims to highlight aspects of UK manufacturing and topics of interest to SMEs. My guest today is Luke Webster, co-founder of the Engineering Network, which owns Industrial Technology Magazine, the website machinebuilding.net, and the exhibitions Machine Building Live and Food Manufacturing Live. Hi Luke, welcome to SME Focus.
Hello Mark, looking forward to the chat.
Let's see. I'm going to kick off by accusing you of not quite being a newspaper man, but being a magazine man. So you spent 2.5 decades in the sales and publishing of technical magazines, which I guess is a particular niche that not many people have to talk about. So welcome to the show, and let me ask you about being a magazine man.
A magazine man. I'm not sure I've been called that before. Do you know, I don't think I really knew what publishing was or even sales was when I had my first job. I was in a telesales role selling classified ads at the back of a magazine. You might remember it, OEM Design, which later became Design Solutions. So I think I was kind of there's the phone. There's a bunch of. Do you remember when you used to have cards, contact cards, and you'd write your notes on what you spoke to a client about? This is before software, CRMs, and things. So I was selling little 8 for the page boxes at the back of a magazine for, I don't know, 120, 150 quid ago. And that was I kind of fell into publishing, didn't really know what it was or even the concept of sales. And that was about 26 years ago. Feels like yesterday, doesn't it?
Funnily enough, when you said classified, I thought of those cards. So it'll be interesting to think how many people in the audience actually even remember those days, but we will see. So I think going back on time, not quite that far, but nearly that far, we probably met when you started with Mark Allen Group on Eureka magazine, if I'm correct. So I would have just been at Lloyd's, and that would have been January 2009. So I try and put in musical reference into most of the episodes. So the musical reference, if it's January, then we've got Hallelujah by Alexandra Burke, and we then transition into Just Dance by Lady Gaga. So I guess at least people will recognise that song if they don't recognise what classified cards were.
And Alexandra Burke, was that an X Factor win, or was it the other one? I can't remember. It's
I think she was a winner, but I don't know. It could have been the song, couldn't it, really? Because they did used to do X Factor for Christmas. So, oh my God, we are dating ourselves.
I think it was a Christmas #1, actually. I think you might be right there. Yeah. Lady Gaga, probably the best artist I've ever seen live, actually, since you bring her up.
Okay.
I
mean, she's amazing.
Seen a lot of bands, but absolutely incredible. Yeah, very powerful voice, very good entertainer. Anyway, so 2009. So yes, we worked together when I was on Eureka, Design Engineering Magazine. The company at the time was Finlay Publications. So Finlays were kind of like everything that we did was engineering and manufacturing. And then I was on Eureka. You were at Lloyd's, remember it well. And I think what got me into Finlay's was working with on a project with the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders, the SMMT, you might know of. So I kind of I went from, I remember actually my move from my first publishing job into Finlay's. I was earning 11 grand, and I went to my boss and I was like, I'm going to save to buy a house. I need to earn more money. I was in sales at the time. And I said, like, I'm really keen. I'll do whatever you need me to. Where's my career going? And he just laughed at me and said, like, you've only been in the job 18 months, you know, give it some time. So I ended up leaving then to go and join Finlay's, but certainly learned a lot from that because, I think when so I find in our team, if you've got young people that are enthusiastic, that's kind of, they're halfway there really. And I felt, there wasn't really a future there for me. But anyway, so I worked on Eureka, worked on a few other magazines, Machinery, Works Management at the time. I would have said they primarily, like 80% was print, and then it was like, oh, we've got a website as well. So the web kind of side of things was still in its infancy. Publishers were trying to work out what they were for, how to monetize them. Newsletters weren't really even a thing back then. The concept of actually sending someone your news in an email, but obviously a lot of times past, and those are kind of bread and butter now. But so Eureka was kind of my sort of cut me down the middle. It would say Eureka. That was I was absolutely loved the design engineering market. It was a lot of innovation. Our readers would be people like places like JLR. We were talking about automotive earlier, aerospace, all sorts of cool applications, and I really enjoyed telling my friends that the readers of our magazines were responsible for design of that car or the plane you get in to go on holiday and things. So it was a real like human connection really between engineering and everyday life.
Okay. And I guess 2009 we were just coming out of the 2008 recession, but obviously you spent a long time, 6 years with Mark Allen Group, 12 years with Findlay, so 18 years, so an awful lot of up and downs. So what did you observe during those times? Are there any interesting or funny stories you can tell us from that sort of your block of time pre-10?
Do you know what? I had a great time in Finley's and Mark Allen. I've kind of come in at the entry level. I was at the bottom really in terms of pecking order, and it was kind of the tail end of what everyone used to talk about, the good old days of publishing, which I never really experienced. It's a bit like in manufacturing. I watched one of your podcasts the other day. You was talking about like the good old days of manufacturing. Well, I don't think either of us have really experienced the days where literally there was so much work, so much money flying around. So publishing was always like, for me, kind of from day one, was always quite tough. You had to make a real business case for advertising budget. You had to work really hard. It wasn't, I didn't come from the days where some of my older colleagues have been around a bit longer, used to sort of book a hotel meeting room with agencies and book like a few £100,000 worth of business over lunch, and it was just, that was publishing, magazines and newspapers were like the only source of information at one point, and the wireless, of course, now and then. So before both our time, of course, Mark. But so I really enjoyed publishing. I enjoyed the freedom that my employers gave me to kind of, it was a bit like, even as a sort of junior person, it was a bit like running your own business. You had the opportunity to come up with new ideas and do things a bit differently, because ultimately our role was, you've got a reader and you've got your advertisers, and they want to get their message to those people. So we were at a sort of quite exciting time where magazines were trying to work out what the role of online was, and then later on it was things like webinars we got involved in, and events. So no, I really enjoyed it. Probably the funny stories I shouldn't repeat on a podcast interview, but it was a great time. And we the people I worked with were Finley's was always really good at really good content. So typically they would hire an engineer and then train them to be a journalist. So they really knew their topic. They knew who they were writing for. It's a sort of the classic created by engineers for engineers kind of line, really. And then they were also really good at data. They had a really strong data division. So quality of data was key. So I kind of grown up with that. Content's important, data's important, and sort of carried those values through in what we do as a business. So it avoids that whole kind of smoke and mirrors thing that I think sometimes publishers get a bit sort of, oh, you have to advertise in our magazine because it's the X circulation and it's this and it's that. Not every person reads magazines. Not every person will attend an event. Not every person will read a newsletter. People will find their information in different ways. I think that's, one of the things I learned at Finley's was about content and data being really, really, really important. So we sold Finley's to Mark Allen in 2014. And then I went from working for a company that was like relatively smallish, about 100 staff, to a company that was growing to about 500 staff during my time there. And I found I was managing the P&L for 32 different brands, 120 staff at our Dartford office, and I was doing less and less of the things that I really enjoyed, and more of the things that meant I was in an office with a closed door, dealing with, as with any business that size, people problems, HR issues, stuff like that. And that's kind of what led me to 10, really, in terms of thinking about, and also just, I think, getting a bit older, thinking, what do I actually enjoy about work? Where do I see my future, really? And hence, setting up the business.
So did you think about setting up the business and come across the opportunity to buy what were very well known and well established brands of machinebuilding.net and Industrial Technology magazine, or was that what spurred you to make the jump and to set up the business, that opportunity?
Probably the latter, really. I mean, I'd probably, for a couple of years, because I'd agreed to stay at Mark Allen for 3 years. That was my contract, and then I was having a good time. It was a growing business. We were doing all sorts of things. Part of my role within MA Business was we bring in new acquisitions, so I get to work with new teams in different markets, and actually that taught me a lot about how other markets operate and things. And I realised even more how much I like engineering. There were some great markets. I mean, but it made me think, do you know what? This is like the stuff that we're doing in engineering is pretty cool. It's a pretty cool sector. You can't live without it. It's it's a must-have sector. It's in everything that we do, and it's continually evolving. So from a content perspective, there's always something people need to learn about, or they'll be researching. Design engineer will be looking at new materials, saving weight, improving efficiency, things like that. So but back to your question, I think I'd always felt like I probably was going to start something of my own, but I just didn't. I'm quite risk averse, and didn't really feel like I had the idea or the thing that was going to make me feel confident that this was the right thing to do. And then a friend of mine, Mark Newby, who I previously, we actually acquired his business Fast while I was at Finley's, and so we worked together for a little while, and he'd gone off to set up a PR company, and he'd obviously run his own sort of publishing and events business before, and we sort of we kept in contact. And then a friend of his, John Seven, was in touch to say, I'm thinking about, John wanted to get more into his sort of technical writing. He was an engineer, became a journalist, and then ended up running and owning machinebuilding.net. And John really missed the kind of writing side of it, so he wanted to sell the company. So that's where Mike and I got to discussions about jointly buying it and taking it on, and that gave me enough courage, really, to say, right, I know this is like something that's going to help me to make that step, and then I can build from there, really. So that was definitely the sort of the trigger to make the move. And I remember actually one evening after a particularly bad day at work, going back to my wife and saying, right, I think it's just the time, I got to do it. And had she not have said, right, go ring Mark, like, you've got to do this now, I don't think I would have done. I would have perhaps got up the following morning, gone to work as normal. Oh, there'll be a better day, kind of thing. So really, I got my wife to thank for that, like, little extra nudge.
Okay, well, I was going to ask you, it's often said, if you're starting a business, how did you persuade your wife? So I suppose it's a truer thing to say that actually she told you what you were doing.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's very true. because I think I needed that little bit of encouragement, and sometimes your own sort of perception of yourself, you don't feel like you got the confidence, or and I'd had a long time in publishing, but always worked in big companies with lots of layers and lots of big circulation teams and big editorial teams and things, and so it was a big step. Especially, do you know, one of the it's strange, the things that you find daunting, but like one of the things that I was very aware of was we are Luke and Mark, okay, like very, very. I would say we've got lots of years under our belt in terms of working in the sector. We know the industry, we know who to talk to, but we just weren't that kind of big glass fronted building with hundreds of staff and things like that. And so we kind of had to think about the business a bit differently, in that, well, let's just really specialize. Like, we don't have to try and do all the things for all people. Let's just really specialize. And it's at a time, 2010 2020, when we started the business and we acquired machinebuilding.net, was you might remember, in between two COVID pandemics. So I resigned over a Teams call, so after 18 years. So and then started the business in lockdown, and so effectively you'll remember it well, like every business didn't have their big offices and didn't have face-to-face contact with people. Everyone was working remotely, and that's how we started the company. We still are 5 years later. We all work remotely. I'd say we're probably better connected than even businesses that all sit in the same office, because we make an effort to communicate and an effort to spend time together. But sorry, I strayed away from your original question. But
it's not a problem at all. I was going to ask, following on from that, how big was the group? How big is the group now, and what was it at the very beginning? So how have you grown? And probably it's worth saying roughly where people are located to give a feel for how scattered you are.
Group makes it sound very grand, Mark. There's 10 of us.
Okay,
but,
there you go.
Yeah.
I'll take payment later.
So we started, Mark, myself, and then my wife Iveta did our accounts and things, so we didn't have to get into sending invoices and things like that. We could focus on running the business. And then we acquired Industrial Technology 2 years later, and that came with Mark Sims, who's really, really well established, well respected editor, great guy. Probably the best editor I've worked with in all of my career, for understanding not just his topic, but also the commercial aspects of running a publishing business. That you've got to try and find something interesting that your customers are talking about. Doesn't mean you just write about them automatically, but it's getting that balance right. So we're 10 staff. We rely on some of our service, like some things are outsourced. We don't have a printing facility. We use a printer, for example, for the magazine and stuff like that, like a lot of publishers do. I guess the sort of the quick growth has probably happened in the last sort of 2 years. We've recruited a sales team, so we've got 3 people in the sales team now that have joined us, and I'm trying to kind of get to the point where I'm able to step back and look a bit at where the business is going. We're not quite there yet, but so we're kind of getting to that sort of size, really, where we can start thinking about future growth and not always on the bike pedaling away every day, night, weekend. So yeah.
So a big part of what we've spoken about has been reminiscing magazines that had little tick boxes that fell out and all these old things, but really, I guess, very much at the front of your mind, and getting to the front of my mind as it's only a couple of weeks away, is the upcoming Machine Building Live and Food Manufacturing Live exhibition. So I think it's quite hard to manage to do as an exhibitor, let alone as an organizer. So can you tell us a little bit about, if we start with Machine Building Live, how it came about, what the concept was, and I guess it's a cliche to say what makes it different. But I'm going to ask, what makes it different, and what made it so successful from the very start?
Good question. I think it might be a cliche, but we're very keen to make sure the event is differentiating from others out there. You know, we've both seen exhibitions come and go, haven't we, over the years? Do you remember Manufacturing Week years ago became this sort of big event with lots of different component parts and things. And so when we acquired machinebuilding.net, very quickly we realised this is a clearly identifiable part of the market that I think is quite overlooked. If you think a machine builder, and within that we also include systems integrators. So machine builder won't just be specialist machinery, it could be they're involved in integrating and designing like a production line. So take for example a food manufacturing site like Warburton's, they're manufacturing bread, you know, so they would have to be thinking about that production line. And I was at an event the other day, actually, it wasn't at Warburton's, but it was another manufacturer. They've got 20 production lines all running at the same time, doing different things, different types of products, some processing, some manufacturing. So that's all got to be designed, it's got to be thought about, it's got to be running efficiently. And because of changes in consumer demands and things like that, the production line is always under review. You're always going to have to look at doing things differently, trying to save time. Technology is evolving. What's the role of robotics? All those kinds of things. So to answer your question, we could see machine building was probably a bit overlooked in the event landscape. And there was nothing really that catered specifically for their needs, but actually it touched from a technology perspective, it touches on so many areas. Sensors like your business with Plus Automation, you've got software, you've got mechanical components like bearings and springs, you've got robotics. There's such a kind of long list of sort of products and technologies that a machine builder needs to know about that they could specify into their production line or their bit of bespoke specialist machinery. So we could see there was like a critical mass in terms of number of suppliers that you could have at the event. But we wanted to, coming on to your question about what makes it different, my business partner Mark ran the FAST exhibition. FAST was Fastening Assembly Solutions Technology, so it's about joining things together. So lots of fastening companies, adhesive companies, and the format was a single day. Everyone has the same size stand, so you've got a level playing field for everyone. There's not not this kind of they are, I'm being careful not to mention names, but they are X company, they're huge, so they've got a big stand. And then there's this pressure on people that if you're the small guy in the corner, then somehow you get overlooked by visitors because you're not, you know, impressive and a big stand. And also, you know, it's a huge investment to have, you know, 100-meter square stand. And I'm not anti-trade shows, there's definitely a place for them, but we felt we wanted to kind of come to the market with something a bit different. So the key kind of differentiators for the event, everyone has the same size stand, so it's a level playing field. We tend to go for kind of smaller to medium sized venues like the Motorcycle Museum, where we hosted our first event. And we vet the visitor attendance, so you have to be an engineer that's there to buy or specify, or in the sort of technical decision making chain, technical director, chief engineer, to get issued with a badge. Because it's such a sort of condensed format and it's just a single day, we want it to be nice and packed and busy, but with the right people there. So we vet the audience, make sure that if it's a salesperson or someone that's there to sell and canvas exhibitors, then sorry, but this is not the event for you. So so those are the kind of key differentiators. Really makes it different, makes it compact. The cost of entry for an exhibitor is much better, much more accessible than the large trade shows and things. So so year one, we sat down and looked at machine building live. We reckon probably 50 exhibitors, and I think we ended up on about 130. We had to hire another 2 rooms at the Bike Museum. So and it actually sold out. We launched it in the August, and it sold out by the Christmas. So it was kind of. We got lucky, I guess, but with a bit of calculation and a bit of, we knew we would launch something that would potentially be in demand from exhibitors, and then it was really busy. We also give a bacon roll and a cup of tea or coffee voucher for our visitors when they arrive, so makes them feel a bit more special rather than just a number rattling around a big exhibition hall. So we just try and, like, because they are readers, we try and treat them a bit differently, make sure that they feel that the event's been created for them, which it has, and that certainly helps as well.
I think for your first show, and I've mentioned this to many people, what was amazing to me was how many attendees you had. I'd actually committed to attend a different show, of a sort of a niche industry one, up in Harrogate. So I popped in literally on 8:30 on the door as yours opened, thinking, have a quick whiz round, see what it's like, because you can never believe what you hear on the internet. I want to see what this thing's going to be like. And it was heaving. And then I drove 200 miles to be me and the security guards in a big prestigious international show. So, the contrast was profound about how many engineers there were walking around. So if it's a bacon butty that brings them in, you did an awful good job of getting people in, compared to admittedly a niche industry show. But the one I went to was absolutely empty. And I've met other people who attended it who all said the same thing. So that's really why I mentioned you had such a remarkable success from the first one, in that you got people there without a reputation of previous shows.
Yeah, I think, I guess obviously we work really hard to promote it. I think people that don't get involved in shows probably don't realise, as an organiser, how hard you have to work to get people to, not just to registering, okay, that's fine, but actually on the day where it's raining outside and you've got a list of things you need to do that you haven't managed to get to, and it's Wednesday, and you know that you're going to be under pressure if you spend the day out at a show. But so I guess, like, the promoting it, and obviously we're 3 weeks out, so we're at that point where it's like, right, pre-registrations. But I'd probably say, like, the winning formula for us is, if you're a machine builder or a systems integrator, and part of our audience is manufacturers as well, so they might be looking at automation and how they adopt it, and then they'll bring a machine builder in to work with them, or a systems integrator. So if you're going to make the time to be there, then you've got to have a good reason. You've got to have a need. You've got to have a project. I think the days of, I'm just going to go and have a little bit of a wander around and get a feel for what's happening in the market, I think they're long gone. I think that's been replaced by social media, websites, magazines, all the sort of information sources, ChatGPT. If you go, right, I want to know about this, it's at your fingertips. But if you've done that search and you've looked for the solution, you still can't find it, and you think, I need to go and find someone and talk to them about this, talk to experts, then we've designed this really to have all the major players under one roof. So before we launched it, I drew up a list of, if I was a machine builder, who would I want there? And it was all your big automation names that you would expect. And we had them all. We still do, and that's kind of, it's why would someone make the time to be there? There's got to be a critical mass of people, and you're only going to get that by, I think, with our kind of format, because people just go, yeah, we should be there. Everyone else is there. It's accessible budget wise. We could do it. You don't have to go to Germany to get sign off because it's 100 grand for the stand, and Germany say, oh no, we're cutting back on exhibitions this year. It's not. It's a meeting opportunity, and it's, people should come away with, depending on what product area they're in, with like 15, 20 good leads that they can then follow up, that should lead to something, good quality leads. And obviously, it's great. I remember very clearly I bumped into you at the entrance as you came in at the show. So thanks for your kind comments about it.
Okay. So we've talked about a Birmingham-based show, the Birmingham Motorcycle Museum, and now Stoneleigh, which is Warwick, which is still Birmingham for those who don't know, or the West Mids. But you've spun the exhibition out. So there was Machine Building North, and I'm assuming it's been published, the talk of machine building. So can you tell us a little bit about the plans?
So after the 2023 event, our next event was 2024 was Machine Building Live. We actually did Food Manufacturing Live at the same venue, different time of year. And then we looked at Machine Building Live and saw there's a huge amount of industry in the Northwest. People were registering, people needed to be there, but they just didn't make that journey down on the day. And so we decided, right, let's take the event to the location rather than trying to get people in the Northwest to travel down. In distance terms, it's not a huge journey, but I think there's something, and there's events that have run in the North before. We knew it would be a challenge. It's a very challenging area to run an event and actually get people to attend, even if you take the event to the North. So, but it was successful. I mean, had we had many more people, I think we would have run out of car parking spaces at Concord in April this year. And Concord was a great appeal as well. Big hangar, Concord down the middle. People could go and do a tour around Concord, and that was quite added a bit of fun to the event. So yeah, really, we took the event to the people because we realised that people weren't making the trip down. And that, going back to Mark's business with Fast, that's what they used to do. They'd do a national event and then take a regional event as well, and it worked really well in that respect. And actually, 95% were completely new visitors that hadn't attended a previous Machine Building Live event. So we knew we were reaching a kind of different geography. But there was about 20% or so that actually weren't based in the North, but had a project and had a need to be there. So there's two things I think with a regional event. There's the fact that it's in that region, so it attracts people from that region because it's easy to get to. But the other thing is trying to tap into a product life cycle where someone may have a need today, but not tomorrow, or they might not have a need today, but if we do it in January next year, actually they're at a different point in their project life cycle. So it's tapping into those two things really, geography and when someone's got a need. So we followed the same sort of research process with Machine Building North. Although it's easier to get to the Midlands, say from London by train, it's quite a quick journey from St Pancras up to London. There was still a lot of people in the southern area, and there's a hell of a lot of industry there, particularly aerospace, defence, medical. So we launched, it was kind of, I think, what they call soft launch phase, where you've kind of had the date and the venue are out there and we're talking to customers about it. So 8th of July 2026 at Sandown Park is Machine Building South. I think we've got about 20 exhibitors signed up so far. Very similar format, one day, 9 till 3, workshop theatres, everyone has the same size stand. The winning formula remains. And then I think Machine Building North, which will be in May next year, I think is 90% sold off the back of the success of the April event. So that's the plan for next year is the 3 events. So you've got Machine Building North, Machine Building South, and our national event, Machine Building Live, co-located with Food Manufacturing Live.
Okay, so I'd obviously spotted the geographic spread, but I hadn't necessarily thought about the spreading them across the year, which makes perfect sense, as you say, in terms of the project. So do you think you've got a sustainable model for face-to-face exhibitions? Because there's always talk about, exhibitions are dying as a trend. Say it always used to be blamed on Google. I guess now we'd blame it on AI, but do you think this is the solution?
Do I think our event format is the solution? I don't know if it's the only solution. I know there's a lot of people that exhibit with us that won't exhibit at anything else. So it makes it accessible for them to exhibit. I would say, to touch on your point there about do events or exhibitions have a future? And this is heavily debated in the events industry generally. I think if there was a death knell to the events industry, it would have been COVID. If you think in terms of no one can meet face to face, there are all sorts of digital event platforms out there that allow people to communicate. It's not the same experience, but a bit like we are now. But what happened post-COVID, events bounced back. People were desperate to get out of the office and see people and and interact. And I think if you add to, probably adding my own comment to that, if you add in AI and trust when it comes to working with suppliers, if you could go and meet the person who's running the business or the technical sales engineer on the stand and talk about, we have visitors that will have a drawing on an iPad or a bit of paper, and they're standing on the stand, like, say, right, this is what we're trying to do. Then that's what I think face-to-face events are about. You could build trust. There's credibility, as opposed to appearing somewhere on a Google search. Who is that company, unless you've heard about them? And I think you can, if you think in the engineering space, if you're designing in a component that's going to go into the food manufacturing sector, and we were talking earlier about the fines for running late if the production line is down. You've got to know that supplier is not going to let you down, and that there's trust, and that you can rig Bob up, who sold it to you, if there's a problem, because Bob will fix it quickly, as opposed to, I've just gone and bought it online. It's a Chinese product. It's cheaper. Yeah, that would do. I think that's why. And I think also the other element of it is learning. You can go and learn about things and talk to other people about their experiences at events, which you just don't really get with anything else. So I think events have definitely got a bright future. I think, for us, our format we will stick to, because that's we feel that works really well. And I think adding Machine Building South to our portfolio is a great next step, really, because we've learned a lot over the last 3 years of being in events, and they're just kind of getting better and better. And I think there's still a lot that we can do to grow them, but in the right way. We're not moving to the NEC anytime soon, for sure.
I'm sure a lot of people will appreciate that, just because of the car parking fee, let alone anything else.
Absolutely, free parking at all of our events. Yeah, that's a key ingredient. Yeah.
This podcast is very much targeted towards SMEs. So can I ask your thoughts and maybe some pieces of advice or anecdotes on how SMEs can go about promoting themselves? They've probably got less resource and they've got less budget. So any thoughts on how they can compete, how they can cut through the noise from a marketing, magazine, exhibition? From your perspective, you've, as we've discussed earlier, been around quite a few years. You're part of an SME yourself, so how do you think SMEs can get out there?
Do you know, I love working with SMEs, because invariably you're talking, either the owner or someone might be part of the family business, or maybe sort of quite senior in the company, and has got a real feel for where they're trying to go. And a lot of our long-term customers I've happened to meet at a show maybe 15 years ago, and we still work with them now. And I think, what we try and do is we try and sort of understand. It sounds a bit cliche, I guess, but it's definitely the right thing. Just understand what their pain points are, what the pressures are, what they're trying to achieve. And there is no, one challenge for our business, there's no kind of, right, here's the box of tricks, I'll sell you this one. Everything that we do is quite bespoke. So it will depend on what a company's trying to achieve. But I think there's no silver bullet solution. There's no, right, if I do X, then that's my marketing box ticked. And there has to be a combination of things that I think lead to success, because I think one of my team the other day, Michelle shared I think it was a LinkedIn image about how many points of contact you need with someone before you actually get the sale. You might have seen it yourself. I think it was something like 12 or something. So do we think that one LinkedIn post is going to be the thing that generates the customer? It might help, but it's not likely to convert them straight away. Is one ad in a magazine, or one newsletter, or one appearance at a show? And I think that's probably the thing I've learned, from my career so far in terms of marketing, it's just you've got to have a combination of things. It's not a silver bullet solution, and we're set up to help people in that way, because we'll happily put together packages and programs that cover multiple elements. We're not print centric. We're not focused on online. We're not focused on events. We do it all, but we serve a community. For our business, we're specialists. We're very focused. So if someone wants to reach a machine builder, if they're involved in automation or a systems integrator, that's our sweet spot. And that's what we're focused on. So but the magic solution is not one thing; it's a multiple of different things. But be highly targeted. I think, to share some advice, there are lots of platforms out there that do a great job, but they're covering all sorts of different markets. But find the one that's very targeted and focus on that one, and then you'll see the results. That's my 2 pence worth.
Okay. You mentioned your wife encouraging you to start the business and that she's involved in the business. So how do you find time for yourself when you're running a busy business, and how do you stop the business becoming too much of part of the evening conversation as well at home?
Well, actually, my son works for the business as well, so you can imagine he doesn't live with us, but obviously he's around quite often. I'd probably say, in all honesty, we're not very good at leaving the business in the office, and but I think that's not all bad, because we all care about it, and sometimes those kind of more relaxed times where you just go, "Can we do this?" or "What do you think about that?" or you have a different kind of conversation to if you were sat down around a board meeting table and thinking about things. So I'd probably say we're not very good at leaving business in the office, but we're getting better at it. But it's not always a bad thing, because we all care about it and we want it to grow and be successful.
Okay. I don't know if this is a cliched question or a bad time to be asking it, but bearing in mind that the exhibition is the 15th of October, so it's getting very, very close. My question was going to be, what things keep you awake at night?
3 weeks before an event? The event probably. I think, that's the thing that probably is I mean, in the early days, if you can imagine, secure jobs, safety, being in the company a long time, lots of security comes with that. Enjoy what you do, everything's right. To then leave that and step out into the cold. In the early kind of months, first couple of years, there was that, how am I going to pay my mortgage kind of thing, which, like we were discussing earlier, in some way I kind of really enjoyed that, back against the wall. Okay, right. And I think you become more innovative, more creative when you've got that kind of pressure. But any event organizer 3 weeks out will be laying awake at night thinking, what else could we do? We've done everything. What else could we try? Pre-registrations, because the reality is you spend a year leading up to an event, but people don't commit to attending until very close, last few weeks before. And generally across the events industry, people are reporting that date when people commit gets closer and closer to the event. I mean, I know it myself. The shows that I've been to before, I decide to go. There's one this week that my colleagues probably haven't registered to attend yet, but they will be going there tomorrow, and they'll probably do it either in the car on the way up or the night before. But that doesn't help. That doesn't help the organisers. So that's probably the main thing. But in the early years, it was kind of like, right, but it was quite enjoyable, actually. I would say that it's that kind of creative pressure, I guess, that I was thriving on in the early years.
Yeah, I mean, creative pressure does get described as excitement, doesn't it? We all want a bit of excitement in our lives. So
yeah,
sounds good. So if you're not on a Zoom call, Teams call, whatever, with somebody, and it's at the weekend and you're outside of the house, what things do you talk to real people about in the kitchen? Is that still work, or aside from work, what do you talk to people? What are the things that interest you outside of this world?
Interest wise, I love my music. I love going to gigs. I quite like a debate about politics, which is quite an easy thing at the moment. There's usually lots to debate. Whether or not I know what I'm talking about is another thing, but I think it's interesting just hearing people's opinions, and so I do quite like a debate, even sort of religion as well and stuff like that. But in terms of we definitely let our hair down a bit outside of work. You've got to, because otherwise it would drive you crazy. But now and then the business will creep into discussion because friends are interested in what's going on, and I'm interested in what they're doing and the dynamics of that. So, but yeah, certainly not all work related when you're trying to switch off and wind down at the weekends. But sometimes work calls on you at the weekend as well, doesn't it? So that's just the nature of the beast.
So the show's normally wrapped up with a traditional question to say, what have you got planned, or what do you hope to achieve in the next 12 months? And this could be personal, work, whatever. What have you got mapped out, or what would you really like to see being achieved in 12 months?
12 months, okay, seems like a long time, but I guess because we've launched Machine Building South, I think that's for us. The next 12 months is business wise, we've bought in quite a few new people. So on a personal level, I'm looking forward to the team getting more involved in doing what we do, because I think early years was very much you're doing everything, and I think the next 12 months for our business is about sharing some of that kind of ownership of people feeling like they're in control of what they're doing, and then seeing, because that's a really exciting sort of step change for us, because they'll have different ideas, different ways of doing things. I think I'll need to learn to step back and let people kind of make their own path. But I think that's it might sound a bit dull, but I think our next 12 months is we got a team now, and it's exciting to see what that team can deliver, and we've got a very clear plan with our events. I think the market's been quite tough for a lot of companies this year. We started with all sorts of changes to employee national insurance, and there was a lot of reported figures of manufacturing shrinking versus where we wanted to be. I think a lot of our customers, it's very mixed. There's some people who are having a really good time, run off their feet, really busy, and there's some that are really struggling. I think it would be nice 2026. I'm sure we say this every year, don't we, Mark? Yeah. But just to have a bit of, where we got the industrial strategy, have a bit of, a bit of stability in government, and a bit of a sort of bit of growth in the economy, and we're pretty resilient as a sector, aren't we? And I think it would just be good to kind of people just to focus on doing what they do well without all the other noise that's happening in the market. So prosperity for all, I guess, over the next 12 months, and economic growth would be good.
I think that's a pretty big, audacious dream for the next 12 months. I have to commend you on being positive and looking forward to things there, Luke. On more mundane matters, how do people go about finding out more about the exhibitions, the magazine, the websites? How would they follow you, contact yourself?
Okay, so company website is theengineeringnetwork.co.uk. That's what 10 stands for. And then there's links to all of our websites from there, specifically Machine Building Live. The event is machinebuilding.live, and Food Manufacturing Live is foodmanufacturing.live as website URLs. But the event's 15th of October, Stoneleigh Park. We've got 20 workshops taking place over the day. Here's a little exclusive for you, Mark. We've actually arranged for our VIP visitors a clay pigeon shooting experience on site with with Stoneleigh Park. So with other venues, we've had kind of something for people to see and to do as a bit of fun while they're there. So the Bike Museum had obviously lots of 800 motorcycles to look at. The Concord venue had Concord in the middle of the hangar, and as a team, we were sitting down one day and we were like, what could we do at Stoneleigh that's just a bit different? And obviously it's a huge sort of agricultural site, but they do clay pigeon shooting just a couple of minutes from the hall. So those that are VIP visitor badges are the ones that are able to access that experience for free while they're there and have a little bit of fun as well. So yeah, look forward to seeing as many of your readers as possible on the 15th of October. If they're an engineer, there'll be a let-in. If they're a salesperson, they won't.
Fantastic. That's a pretty good summary for any event. Before I sign off, though, I'm going to ask you, do you have a final sentence, question, or thing you'd like to sign off the episode with from your side?
Only come along to the show, register, and just want to thank you, Mark, for the chat. We've known each other many years. It's good to kind of talk things that are a bit different from the usual conversations around marketing. So yeah, enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Indeed, I'll add, come along to see me at the show as well on stand 48, I think, but I will get away from
what's
that.
The stand number?
Yeah, 48. So you can tell I've actually been doing some of the paperwork. Machine safety, sensors, and the ability to help people make sense of them and save some money. That's what we're all about, helping people save money. Right, I will wrap up with much more mundane stuff, not anything to do with sensors, and say to people, if they'd like to get in touch with the show with a comment, a suggestion, or more importantly, if you'd like to come on in a future episode, please email us at inquiries@mtdcnc.com or contact myself, Stuart Whitehead, or Joe Reynolds. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. From me, Mark Weymouth at Sensor Specialist Plus Automation. Cheers. Have fun.